The soup smelled like love, but it was seasoned with murder. Adam Sandler stood in the kitchen of their Beverly Hills mansion, stirring the butternut squash soup with the same wooden spoon he'd used 10 years ago when he'd first cooked for Margot. Back then, his hands had trembled with nervousness. Now they were steady as a surgeon's, even with the small vial of poison weighing down his pocket like a guilty conscience he no longer possessed. 10 years. A decade of marriage that had given him everything: wealth, status, the perfect family portrait for his office wall, and Margot. She'd given him her whole life. Her law career abandoned for his ambitions. Her family alienated when they'd warned her about marrying outside her race. Her dreams set aside, one by one, like old photographs gathering dust. "You're really cooking." Margot's voice carried from the doorway a mixture of surprise and something else. Hope, maybe. She looked beautiful in the candlelight, her dark skin glowing against the cream silk dress he'd bought her last month. Guilt purchase, Hillary had called it when she'd seen the credit card statement. Hillary. 26 years old with legs that went on forever and a moral compass that pointed wherever the money was. She was waiting for him at the Four Seasons, probably painting her nails that garish red, counting down the hours until Margot would be gone and they could stop hiding. "Your favorite," Adam said, forcing warmth into his voice. "Butternut squash with sage and cream, just like our first date," Margot finished, and for a moment her face transformed. The stress lines softened, the guarded expression melted away. She looked like the 22-year-old law student who'd laughed at his nervous jokes in that little Cambridge cafe. "Adam, I thought you'd forgotten." He had forgotten. It was Hillary who'd reminded him, oddly enough. She'd been going through Margot's journals, research she'd called it, and found the entry about their first date. Every detail meticulously recorded in Margot's careful handwriting. The soup, the rain that had started halfway through dinner, the way he'd given her his jacket for the walk home. "How could I forget?" He lied smoothly, adding cream to the pot. 10 years, baby. We made it." From the corner of his eye, he saw Shelley standing by the kitchen island. 9 years old, but with eyes that seemed ancient sometimes. She was watching him with that unsettling intensity she'd inherited from her mother. Always watching, always thinking. Too smart for her own good, his mother had said once. Adam agreed. Children should be seen and not heard, certainly not analyzing every move their parents made. "Shelley, sweetheart, why don't you go watch TV?" he suggested, keeping his tone light. "This is Mommy and Daddy's special dinner." "I want to watch you cook," she said simply, not moving. Her small hands gripped the edge of the counter, and she pulled herself up onto a bar stool. "You never cook anymore." "Well, tonight's special." He turned back to the stove, feeling her eyes boring into his back. The vial in his pocket seemed to pulse with his heartbeat. Tasteless, odorless, untraceable. It would look like food poisoning at first. By the time the symptoms got severe enough for the hospital, it would be too late. The lawyer had already drawn up the papers. Hillary would be added to all his accounts by tomorrow afternoon. A grieving widower would need support after all. Margot moved into the kitchen, her perfume, jasmine and something uniquely her, filling the space. "It smells amazing," she said, and there were tears in her eyes. "Adam, these last few months. I know we've been struggling, but this, tonight, maybe it's a new beginning." The hope in her voice should have made him reconsider. Should have, but didn't, because Adam Sandler had stopped loving his wife the day she turned 35, and the first grey hair had appeared at her temple. The day her laugh lines had become permanent. The day he'd seen Hillary at the office Christmas party and realized he could have someone younger, someone who looked at him like he was a god instead of a flawed man with a receding hairline and a growing belly. Definitely a new beginning, he agreed, reaching for bowls. His hand went to his pocket, fingers closing around the vial. Why don't you sit down? I'll serve you. He ladled soup into the first bowl, the one with the tiny chip on the rim, Margot's favorite, oddly enough. She said it gave it character. His back was to them as he worked, body blocking their view. The vial came out smooth as silk. The powder fell like snow into the golden soup, disappearing instantly as he stirred. But he'd forgotten about the mirror. The decorative mirror Margot had hung last Christmas, angled perfectly to reflect the stove. Shelley saw everything. She saw her father's hand emerge from his pocket, saw the small vial, the white powder, the practiced way he stirred it in, saw him pocket the empty container and turn with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Here we go, Adam said, carrying the bowl toward Margot. The lady of the house gets the first taste. Margot reached for the spoon, her wedding ring catching the light. The ring he'd saved 6 months to buy when they were young and poor and stupid with love. She brought the spoon to her lips. Mama! Shelley's scream shattered the moment like a brick through glass. Don't eat! Mama! Don't eat it! The bowl crashed to the floor, soup spreading across the Italian marble like liquid gold. Margot jerked back, her eyes wide with shock. Shelley! What? He put something in it. Shelley was off the stool now, grabbing her mother's arm, pulling her back. I saw him. White powder from his pocket. Daddy put something in your soup. The silence that followed was deafening. Adam's mind raced, calculating, searching for the lie that would save him. Margot, she's being ridiculous. It was just salt. Salt from your pocket? Margot's voice was deadly quiet. She was backing away now, Shelley pressed against her side. You carry salt in your pocket. It was. I wanted it to be perfect. I had special seasoning. A soft meow interrupted him. Midnight, their black cat, had found the spilled soup. Before anyone could stop her, she was lapping at the puddle, purring with contentment. Midnight, no. Shelley started forward, but Margot held her back. They watched. All three of them stood frozen, watching the cat eat. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. Adam started to speak, to craft another lie, when Midnight made a strange sound. A choking, gasping sound. The cat stumbled, her legs suddenly unsteady. Foam appeared at her mouth. She took 2 more steps, then collapsed, her body convulsing violently. Within seconds, she was still, dead. Margot's hand covered her mouth, but no sound came out. She stared at the dead cat, then at the soup, then at her husband. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. You tried to kill me. Margot, no, listen. You tried to murder me. Louder now, stronger. The shock was wearing off, replaced by something else. Not fear. Rage. Pure, crystalline rage. On our anniversary, in front of our daughter. You tried to poison me like I was some inconvenience to be disposed of. Mama, Shelley whispered, tugging at her mother's dress. We need to go. Now. Adam stepped forward, his mask finally slipping. You're not going anywhere. This is my house. You have nothing without me. Margot looked at him then, really looked at him, saw him clearly for perhaps the first time in years. The man she'd loved was gone, maybe had never existed. In his place stood a stranger capable of murder. Shelley, she said quietly, not taking her eyes off Adam, go pack a bag. Quick as you can. You walk out that door, you're done, Adam snarled. No money, no home, nothing. I'll destroy you. Margot bent down and gently closed Midnight's eyes. When she stood, her spine was straight, her head high. You just tried to murder me, Adam. You destroyed yourself. She took Shelley's hand and walked out of the kitchen, leaving Adam standing alone among the ruins of his perfect plan. The soup still dripped from the table, each drop sounding like a countdown to his doom. He didn't know it yet, but his life as he knew it was over. And Margot's revenge had just begun. Chapter 2. The Abandonment. The roses in Jim Sterling's garden were white as wedding dresses. and Margot stood among them like a woman at her own funeral. 3 days had passed since the anniversary dinner. 3 days of Adam's relentless psychological warfare. He'd changed the locks while she was at the police station filing a report. He'd frozen their joint accounts before the banks opened. He'd sent Shelley to his mother's house for her safety, using his parental rights like a weapon. And now this, a supposed business dinner at the Sterling estate that had turned into another cruel game. "He'll be here any minute," Margot whispered to herself, checking her phone again. No signal. The Sterling mansion was 40 miles outside the city, nestled in hills that apparently blocked cell towers as effectively as they blocked the outside world. Adam had insisted she arrive early. "Jim Sterling is particular about punctuality," he'd said, straightening his tie in the mirror this morning. "This deal could save us, Margot. After everything that's happened, we need this fresh start." He'd even kissed her cheek, a gesture so foreign after months of cold distance that she'd actually flinched. She'd wanted to refuse. Every instinct screamed that this was another manipulation, but Adam still controlled everything: the money, the house, and, most importantly, access to Shelley. "Play along," she'd told herself. "Play along until you can figure out a plan." The mansion behind her was magnificent. 3 stories of limestone and glass that seemed to grow from the hillside itself. She'd been greeted at the door by a confused housekeeper who'd said Mr. Sterling wasn't expecting anyone tonight. The woman had tried to call him, but he was in his study, apparently unreachable. She'd asked Margot to wait in the garden. That had been an hour ago. The sun was setting now, painting the sky the color of old bruises. Margot's hands shook as she tried her phone again. Nothing. She walked to the front of the mansion where Adam had dropped her off, her heels sinking into the gravel driveway. His Mercedes was gone. Of course it was gone. "Excuse me?" Margot spun around. A man stood in the doorway, tall, silver-haired, with the kind of quiet presence that commanded attention without demanding it. He wore a simple grey sweater and dark slacks, nothing like the suits Adam had said he always wore. "I'm Jim Sterling," he said, stepping into the dying light. "My housekeeper said someone was waiting in the garden. I wasn't expecting." He stopped, clearly noticing her distress. "Are you all right?" The kindness in his voice, genuine without calculation, broke something in Margot. The tears she'd been holding back for 3 days finally came. "I'm sorry," she gasped, mortified. "I'm so sorry. My husband said, he said there was a dinner, a business dinner. He dropped me off and said he'd be right back, but that was over an hour ago and my phone won't work, and I think he's—" She stopped, unable to voice the truth, that her husband had abandoned her like unwanted luggage. Jim Sterling's expression shifted from confusion to understanding to something that might have been anger, but not at her. He pulled out his own phone, checked it. "The mountains block the signal here. We have a landline inside. Please, come in. You can call from my study." He didn't touch her, didn't even reach for her arm to guide her. He simply walked beside her, maintaining a respectful distance as he led her through the mansion's grand foyer. The study was exactly what she'd expected. Dark wood, leather-bound books, a massive desk that probably cost more than most people's cars. He gestured to the phone. "Take your time. I'll be just outside if you need anything." Margot dialed Adam's number with trembling fingers. The call went straight to a message. "The number you have dialed is no longer in service." She tried again. Same message. Her heart began to race as she tried their home phone. "The number you have dialed has been disconnected." Her sister's number still worked, thank God. Naomi answered on the second ring. "Margot, where are you? I've been trying to reach you all day." "Naomi, I'm at the Sterling mansion. Adam left me here. He's not answering." "Margot, listen to me." Naomi's voice was urgent. "Adam filed for divorce this morning. He's claiming abandonment and mental instability. He's got some doctor saying you've been making false accusations, that you poisoned the cat yourself for attention. He's already got a restraining order keeping you from the house." The room spun. Margot gripped the desk to keep from falling. "Shelley. Where's Shelley?" "With his mother. He's filed for emergency custody, claiming you're a danger to her. Margot, he's planned this whole thing. There's more. He's been moving money for weeks. The accounts aren't just frozen, they're empty." Margot hung up the phone and sank into the leather chair. She understood now. This wasn't just cruelty, it was strategy. Dump her somewhere isolated with no money, no car, no way to get back. By the time she found her way home, he'd have painted her as the unstable wife who'd disappeared, abandoned her family. Who would believe her about the poisoning when she'd literally vanished right after making the accusation? A soft knock on the door. Jim Sterling entered with a glass of water and a box of tissues. He set them on the desk and took the chair across from her, still maintaining that careful distance. "Mrs. Westbrook," he said quietly, "I don't know what's happening, but you're clearly in distress. Is there someone I can call? Somewhere I can drive you?" She looked at him, this stranger with his kind eyes and patient demeanor. "I have nowhere to go. He's taken everything. My daughter, my home, my money. He left me here to make me look crazy, and it's working." Jim was quiet for a moment, studying her. Then he said, "I have a guest house on the property. It's fully furnished, completely private. You're welcome to stay there tonight while you figure out your next steps." I don't even know you." "No," he agreed. "You don't. But I know Adam Sandler." Something flickered in his grey eyes. "We've done business. I know exactly what kind of man he is. And I know that anyone he's trying to destroy this thoroughly must be a threat to him somehow." "He tried to poison me," Margot said suddenly, the words tumbling out. 3 nights ago, our anniversary dinner. He put something in my soup. Our daughter saw him do it. The cat died from eating it." Jim's expression didn't change, but his knuckles whitened as he gripped the armrest. "And now he's taken your daughter and disappeared you out here where no one would think to look?" "You believe me?" "Mrs. Westbrook, I've built my fortune by reading people. You're not lying. You're not crazy. You're a woman whose husband is trying to erase her." He stood slowly. "The guest house is yours for as long as you need it. No strings, no expectations. Tomorrow, I'll have my driver take you wherever you need to go. But tonight, you're safe." Margot felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Protected. Not controlled, not manipulated, but genuinely protected. "There's one more thing," she said. "My daughter. He has her at his mother's house. She saw everything. She's the only witness to what he did." Jim nodded thoughtfully. "My driver is very good at what he does. He's also very discreet. If you give him the address, he can check on your daughter, make sure she's safe." "Why?" Margot asked. "Why would you help me? You don't know me." Jim Sterling walked to the window, looking out at his gardens in the fading light. "My wife died 5 years ago. Cancer. During her treatment, I watched how the medical system, insurance companies, even some of our supposed friends tried to take advantage of her vulnerability. I couldn't stand it then, and I can't stand it now." He turned back to her. "Besides, Adam Sandler made the mistake of bringing you to my home. That makes you my guest, and I take that responsibility seriously." An hour later, Margot stood in the guest house, a charming 2-bedroom cottage that was nicer than anywhere she'd lived before marrying Adam. Jim had been true to his word. He'd shown her the place, made sure she had everything she needed, and then left her in peace. No lingering looks, no subtle suggestions, just kindness without agenda. Her phone, now connected to the house's Wi-Fi, buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Oliver, Mr. Sterling's driver. Your daughter is safe. She asked me to tell you she's keeping notes about everything. She says to be strong. She has a plan." Margot smiled through her tears. Her 9-year-old daughter, already strategizing, already fighting back. Adam thought he'd won by abandoning her here. He had no idea he'd just delivered her to the one place where she could heal, plan, and prepare her revenge. And he certainly had no idea that Jim Sterling, the businessman he'd tried to impress for years, was about to become his worst nightmare. Outside, the white roses glowed in the moonlight, and for the first time in months, Margot felt something like hope. Chapter 3. 1 month of silence. 30 days of silence can drive a woman insane, or it can forge her into steel. Margot was becoming the latter. A month had passed since Adam had abandoned her at the Sterling estate like a piece of lost luggage he had no intention of claiming. 30 days of no contact, no explanation, no acknowledgement that she even existed. Her calls went unanswered. Her emails bounced back. The lawyer she'd managed to reach through a friend had informed her that Adam was claiming she'd left voluntarily, that she'd abandoned her family for another man. The irony wasn't lost on her. The morning sun streamed through the library windows of the Sterling mansion, illuminating dust motes that danced like tiny spirits in the air. Margot ran her fingers along the spines of first editions, organizing them by publication date. She'd insisted on working despite Jim's protests that she was a guest, not an employee. "I need to earn my keep," she'd told him that first week, when the shock had worn off and reality had set in. "I'm not a charity case." He'd studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "The library needs cataloguing. My wife started the project before she got sick. I haven't had the heart to hire someone else to finish it." It was perfect work for Margot. Quiet, methodical, allowing her mind to process everything while her hands stayed busy. The library was massive, 3,000 volumes ranging from ancient texts to modern fiction. Amanda Sterling had been a collector with exquisite taste, and Margot felt honored to complete her work. "Your tea, Mrs. Westbrook." Margot looked up to find Oliver, Jim's driver, holding a delicate china cup. The older British man had become something of an ally over the past month, checking on Shelley whenever possible, bringing back small reports that kept Margot from losing her mind with worry. "Thank you, Oliver. Any word today?" "Miss Shelley asked me to give you this." He pulled out a small notebook, one of those composition books children used in school. "She said you'd understand." Margot's hands trembled as she opened it. Shelley's neat handwriting filled the pages, dates, times, observations, a 9-year-old's meticulous documentation of her father's crimes. Day 1. Daddy told Grandma that Mama is sick in the head. I told her about the poison, but she said I was confused. She doesn't believe me. Day 3. Heard Daddy on the phone with someone named Hillary. He said, "She's exactly where I wanted her. Give it a month and she'll look completely crazy." Day 7. Found Daddy's second phone in his jacket. Took pictures of texts with my tablet before he noticed. Day 15. Daddy brought Hillary to the house. She's sleeping in Mama's bed. I pretend to be asleep, but I record everything. Margot pressed the notebook to her chest, tears streaming down her face. Her baby girl, forced to be a spy in her own home, forced to pretend to accept the woman who'd replaced her mother. "She's remarkable, your daughter," Oliver said quietly. "Reminds me of you." "She's stronger than me," Margot whispered. "I'm hiding here while she's—" "You're surviving," a voice said from the doorway. Jim Sterling stood there, concern etched on his features. "There's no shame in that." He entered the library with his characteristic careful distance, never coming too close, always maintaining that respectful space. In a month, he'd never once made her feel uncomfortable or obligated. He'd been nothing but kind, expecting nothing in return. "May I?" He gestured to a chair across from her. She nodded, and he sat, his grey eyes taking in the notebook in her hands. "From Shelley. She's documenting everything, 9 years old, and she's building a legal case." Margot laughed bitterly. "What kind of childhood is that?" "The kind that will make her formidable," Jim said. "She's learning that injustice must be documented, challenged, defeated. Not everyone gets that lesson so young." Margot noticed him glance at her arms where her sleeves had ridden up. The bruises had faded from purple to yellow, but they were still visible. Adam's fingerprints from their last physical argument, the night before the poisoning attempt. She quickly pulled her sleeves down, but Jim had already looked away, his jaw tight. "I've been doing some research of my own," he said, changing the subject. "Your husband has been busy this month. He's filed for divorce on grounds of abandonment. He's claiming you had a mental breakdown and disappeared. He's even got a psychiatrist, Dr. Harold Benson, writing reports about your supposed instability." "Dr. Benson? I've never even met him." "No, but he's been having an affair with Adam's mother for 2 years. Oliver discovered that interesting fact." Jim pulled out a folder. "I've also learned that Adam emptied your joint accounts 3 days before the poisoning attempt. He transferred everything to offshore accounts in the Caymans. The house has been refinanced in his name only. He's been planning this for at least 6 months." Margot stared at the evidence Jim had gathered. "Why are you doing this? Why do you care?" Jim was quiet for a moment, looking out at the gardens where his white roses bloomed. "Because Adam Sandler thinks he's won. He thinks he's destroyed you completely, and there's nothing I despise more than a man who destroys the woman who loved him. You don't even know me." "I know enough." He stood, still maintaining that careful distance. "I know you've been organizing my library by publication date and literary movement, which tells me you're educated and thoughtful. I know you make tea for my staff even though you're a guest, which tells me you're kind. I know you work 14-hour days to avoid thinking about your daughter, which tells me you're heartbroken. And I know you haven't once asked me for money or tried to manipulate me with tears or promises, which tells me you have integrity." He moved toward the door, then paused. "There's something else. Oliver heard from a contact at the courthouse. Adam is planning to file for full custody based on your abandonment. The hearing is in 3 weeks. Margot felt the floor drop out from under her. "I can't even afford a lawyer." "You can use mine, Harold Morrison, best family law attorney in the state. He owes me several favors." Before she could protest, he held up a hand. "It's not charity, it's justice. There's a difference." That evening, Margot sat in the guest house, Shelley's notebook spread before her. Her daughter had documented everything: dates, times, conversations, photos she'd managed to take with her tablet. It was the testimony of a child forced to grow up too fast. But it was also evidence. Real, substantive evidence. Her phone rang, a number she didn't recognize. "Mama!" Shelley's voice was barely a whisper. "Baby, oh my God, are you okay? How are you calling me?" "I borrowed a phone from my friend at school. Mama, I need to tell you something. Daddy doesn't know I know, but I heard him talking to Hillary. They're planning something for the custody hearing. They're going to say you tried to hurt me, that you were violent. Hillary is going to testify that she saw you hit me." Margot's blood ran cold. "But she's never even met you before this month." "I know, but Daddy's paying her to lie. Mama, I'm scared. What if the judge believes them?" "Listen to me, baby. You keep documenting everything, okay? Write it all down. Take pictures when you can. We're going to fight this." "I miss you, Mama." "I miss you too, sweetheart. So much it hurts, but we're going to get through this. We're going to win." "How do you know?" Margot looked out the window at the main house, where Jim Sterling's study light still burned. "Because we have something Daddy doesn't expect. We have help." After Shelley hung up, Margot sat in the darkness, planning. Adam thought a month of silence would break her. He thought isolation would drive her mad. He thought abandonment would destroy her. He was wrong. Every day of silence had made her stronger. Every moment of solitude had clarified her purpose. Every small kindness from Jim Sterling had reminded her that not all men were monsters. Adam had given her 30 days to plan her revenge, 30 days to gather strength, 30 days to transform from victim to warrior. She opened Shelley's notebook again and began to write her own documentation. Times, dates, patterns of abuse going back years, things she'd been too afraid or too ashamed to acknowledge before. The bruises Jim had noticed were just the latest in a long pattern. The poisoning wasn't the first attempt to hurt her, it was just the most obvious. Outside, a nightingale sang in the garden, its melody carrying across the estate. Margot had read once that nightingales sing louder in urban areas, trying to be heard over the noise. She understood that now. Sometimes you had to raise your voice to be heard over the silence. Tomorrow she would meet with Jim's lawyer. Tomorrow she would begin the legal fight for her daughter. Tomorrow she would start her journey from abandoned wife to avenging angel. But tonight she sat in the guest house of a kind stranger, surrounded by evidence of her husband's cruelty, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. She felt powerful. The silence hadn't broken her, it had remade her, and Adam Sandler had no idea what was coming. Chapter 4. Uncovering the Truth. The truth has a way of surfacing, like bodies in a lake. No matter how deep you bury it, it always rises. Jim Sterling stood in his study at 2 a.m., surrounded by bankers' boxes and manila folders. Pieces of Adam Sandler's life spread across his mahogany desk like evidence at a crime scene. He'd started with simple curiosity. What kind of man abandons his wife at a stranger's home? Now, 3 weeks into his investigation, he'd uncovered something far darker than simple cruelty. "Sir?" Oliver appeared in the doorway with coffee. "You should rest." "Look at this, Oliver." Jim held up a photograph. Adam and Hillary at a hotel in Miami, dated 2 years ago. He's been with his secretary since she started working for him, but that's not the worst part. Oliver examined the financial records Jim had obtained through his banking connections. Careful transfers, small at first, then growing larger. Money moving from Adam's company accounts to personal holdings, then to offshore accounts. Classic embezzlement, but with a twist. "He's been setting up his wife to take the fall," Oliver observed, pointing to signatures on transfer documents. "These are forgeries of Mrs. Westbrook's signature." "Exactly. He's been planning this for at least 2 years. The affair with Hillary was just the beginning. He needed Margot gone, but divorce would mean splitting assets, paying alimony. So he created a different plan." Jim pulled out another file, medical records he'd obtained through less than legal means. 6 months ago, Adam started seeing Dr. Harold Benson, claiming his wife was showing signs of mental instability, creating a paper trail. Then 3 months ago, he took out a large life insurance policy on Margot, $2 million. "The poisoning," Oliver said quietly. "The poisoning. When that failed, he pivoted. Make her disappear, claim abandonment, paint her as crazy. Either way, he wins." Jim's jaw tightened, but he made one mistake. He brought her here. The next morning, Jim found Margot in the library, sunlight catching the gold undertones in her dark skin as she carefully restored a damaged first edition. She'd become part of the rhythm of the house over the past month, her quiet strength, a constant presence that he found himself drawn to more each day. "Margot," he said carefully, "we need to talk." She looked up, and he saw the fear flash in her eyes, the same fear he'd seen that first night. "Is it Shelley? Is she okay?" "Shelley's fine. This is about Adam." He set the boxes on the library table. "I've been investigating your husband. What I've found, you need to see this." For the next hour, Jim walked her through the evidence. The affair going back 2 years. The embezzlement, nearly $3 million siphoned from his company. The forged signatures making it look like Margot had authorized the transfers. The life insurance policy. the psychiatric reports building a case for her instability. Margot's hands shook as she examined each document, but she didn't cry, not at first. It was only when she saw the photo of Adam and Hillary, his hand on her pregnant belly, that the tears came. "She's pregnant," her voice broke. "He's having a baby with her." 3 months along, according to my sources, Jim said gently. "I'm sorry." Margot stood abruptly, walking to the window. Her shoulders shook with silent sobs, but when she turned back, her face was fierce despite the tears. "He didn't just want me gone," she said. "He wanted me erased. Dead or destroyed, it didn't matter which. The forensic accountant I consulted says the embezzlement trail leads directly back to him, but it will take time to prove. The forgeries are good, but not perfect. With the right lawyer, he's been stealing from his own company and planning to blame me." Margot laughed bitterly. "The company I helped him build. I worked 2 jobs to put him through business school. I gave up my law career to support his dreams, and this is what he does." Jim wanted to comfort her, to close the distance between them, but he maintained his respectful space. "There's more. Oliver has been in contact with Shelley. She has something to show you." As if on cue, Oliver entered with an iPad. "Miss Shelley asked me to give you this. She said the password is your anniversary, your real anniversary, not the one her father celebrates." Margot typed in a date, and the screen came alive with videos. Dozens of them, all taken secretly by a 9-year-old girl who'd sensed danger before anyone else. The first video, Adam on the phone, laughing. "She's so stupid, Hillary. She actually thinks I'm trying to save our marriage. By next month, she'll either be dead or in a psychiatric ward." Another video. Adam and Hillary in the kitchen, kissing while Margot was at her mother's funeral 6 months ago. "Once she's gone, all of this will be ours," Hillary purred. "The house, the money, everything." Video after video of damning evidence. Adam discussing the poison with someone on the phone. Adam practicing Margot's signature. Adam showing Hillary the life insurance policy. "My God," Jim breathed. "Your daughter is brilliant." "She knew," Margot whispered. "She knew before any of us. She's been protecting me the only way she could, by watching, documenting, waiting." The final video was recent, dated just yesterday. Shelley had hidden the tablet somewhere in Adam's home office, recording him and Hillary planning their testimony for the custody hearing. "I'll tell them she hit me," Hillary was saying, "that I saw her strike Shelley multiple times. The bruises on her arms will help. We'll say she did it to herself for attention." "Perfect," Adam replied. "And I'll have Dr. Benson testify that she's delusional, possibly schizophrenic. No judge will give custody to a crazy woman who abandoned her child." "What about the kid?" "She might tell them about the poisoning." Adam's laugh was cold. "She's 9. Who's going to believe a child over 2 adults and a psychiatrist? Besides, I've been telling her mother is sick, that she imagines things. Kids are easy to confuse." The video ended. Margot stood perfectly still, her face carved from stone. "He's not going to get away with this," she said quietly. "He's not going to steal my daughter and my life and walk away clean." "No," Jim agreed. "He's not. My lawyer has seen all of this. We can file emergency motions, get the custody hearing postponed, demand investigations into the embezzlement." "It's not enough," Margot interrupted. "The legal system moves too slowly. By the time they investigate, he'll have hidden everything better. He'll have coached Hillary on exactly what to say. He'll have convinced Shelley that I really am crazy." She turned to face Jim, and he saw something new in her eyes, not just pain or anger, but determination sharp as a blade. "I want to destroy him," she said simply, "not just beat him in court. I want to take apart everything he's built, piece by piece, until there's nothing left but the truth of what he is." Jim studied her for a long moment. This woman who'd arrived broken and abandoned, who'd spent a month healing in silence, who'd just discovered the depth of her husband's betrayal. She wasn't breaking. She was becoming something else entirely. "Then we'll destroy him," Jim said. Together. Why? Margot asked, the question she'd been wanting to ask for weeks. Why do you care so much about what happens to me? Jim was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. Because I recognize something in you. The same thing I saw in my wife when she was fighting cancer. Grace under impossible pressure. Strength that comes not from never breaking, but from breaking and choosing to rebuild anyway. He paused. And because Adam Sandler represents everything I despise in men, those who view women as possessions to be discarded when they're no longer useful. I was useful once, Margot said softly. I was young and beautiful and blind with love. I gave him everything. You're still beautiful, Jim said quietly, then seemed surprised he'd said it aloud. And you're certainly not blind anymore. Their eyes met across the library, and something shifted in the air between them. Not attraction, not yet, that would come later, but recognition. Two souls damaged by different traumas, finding common ground in the pursuit of justice. We need a plan, Margot said, breaking the moment. Something that exposes everything all at once, so he can't spin it or hide. I have some ideas, Jim said. But first, we need to get Shelley somewhere safe. If Adam realizes she's been recording him, he'll hurt her. Margot's face went pale. Oh God, my baby, she's in that house with them, pretending everything is normal. And if he finds out, he won't, Jim said firmly. Oliver is watching. The moment we sense any danger, we'll extract her. But for now, she's our eyes inside. She's gathering evidence we couldn't get any other way. Margot nodded, though every maternal instinct screamed at her to rush to her daughter immediately. She's 9 years old, and she's running reconnaissance missions against her own father. What kind of mother does that make me? The kind who's teaching her daughter that evil must be confronted, even when it wears a familiar face, Jim said. The kind who's showing her that women don't have to accept abuse in silence. The kind who's going to win this war and give her daughter a better life. That night, Margot sat in the guest house with all the evidence spread before her. 2 years of planning on Adam's part, 2 years of lies, manipulation, and betrayal. But he'd made one crucial error. He'd underestimated the women in his life. His daughter, who'd seen through him from the beginning, and his wife, who was no longer the naive girl he'd married. Tomorrow, she would start her counter-offensive. But tonight, she allowed herself one moment of pure rage. She screamed into a pillow until her throat was raw, pounded her fists against the mattress until her arms ached, cried until there were no tears left. Then she stood, washed her face, and began to plan Adam Sandler's complete and utter destruction. The truth had surfaced. Now it was time to drown him in it. Chapter 5. The plan begins. Revenge, when done correctly, is not a dish best served cold. It's a symphony that builds slowly to a devastating crescendo. Margot sat at Jim's dining table, transforming it into a war room. Legal documents, photographs, financial records, and Shelley's videos covered every surface. Jim's lawyer, Harold Morrison, studied each piece with the intensity of a chess master planning 20 moves ahead. The prenup is ironclad under normal circumstances, Morrison said, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. But attempted murder changes everything. In this state, any contract becomes void when one party attempts to kill the other. Can we prove the poisoning? Margot asked. The cat's autopsy showed traces of ethylene glycol, antifreeze. Shelley's video shows him adding something to your food. Combined with the life insurance policy he took out. Morrison smiled grimly. It's circumstantial but compelling. Jim entered with coffee, his presence a steady comfort Margot had come to rely on. He'd rolled up his sleeves, and Margot noticed the way his forearms flexed as he set down the tray. She pushed the thought away. This wasn't the time. Oliver just brought something interesting, Jim said, handing Margot an envelope. Inside was a flash drive and a note in Shelley's handwriting. Phase 1 begins today. Love, your little general. Margot plugged in the drive, and her daughter's face appeared on Jim's laptop screen. The video was dated that morning. "Hi, Mama," Shelley whispered, clearly recording from her bedroom closet. "I did what we planned. I found Daddy's business partner contact list in his office. Mr. Harrison, Mr. Wyatt, Mr. Chen, all of them. I made packages with copies of Daddy and Hillary's photos, their texts, and a recording of him saying his partners were idiots who deserved to be cheated. I mailed them this morning when Grandma took me to school. Used the post office 3 blocks away. They should get them tomorrow." The video cut to footage Shelley had taken of the packages. Professional-looking manila envelopes addressed in typed labels. No return address. Inside each one, devastating evidence of Adam's affair and his contempt for his business partners. "Your daughter is terrifying," Morrison said with admiration. 9 years old, and she's running a covert operation. "She gets it from her mother," Jim said quietly, his eyes on Margot with something that looked like pride. The next part of Shelley's video showed her in Adam's home office. "I also found something else, Mama. Hillary is really stupid. She has Instagram." The screen filled with Hillary's social media posts, designer bags, expensive jewelry, exotic vacations. "Look at this one from the Cayman Islands last month." The photo showed Hillary on a beach, champagne glass raised. But in the background, partially visible, was Adam at what appeared to be a bank, briefcase in hand. The geotag read, "Georgetown, Grand Cayman." The date matched exactly with when Adam had supposedly been at a business conference in Detroit. "That's it," Morrison breathed. "That's where the money went. The Caymans. She just gave us the when and where." "Can we trace it?" Margot asked. "With this information, yes. I have contacts in international banking. It'll take a few days, but we can find those accounts." Jim leaned over Margot's shoulder to see better, and she caught his scent, cedar, and something uniquely him. For a moment, she forgot to breathe. When she looked up, their faces were inches apart. His grey eyes held hers for a heartbeat too long before he stepped back, clearing his throat. "We should plan the next phase," he said, his voice rougher than usual. Over the next 3 days, they executed their plan with military precision. The packages arrived at Adam's partners' offices, hand-delivered to ensure they were received. Oliver, stationed strategically, reported the immediate fallout. "Mr. Harrison left Adam's office after a 20-minute shouting match," Oliver reported. "I heard him say something about pulling out of the Singapore deal." "Mr. Wyatt's wife called Mrs. Wyatt," he continued. "Apparently Adam had propositioned her at last year's Christmas party. She's now showing her husband the texts Adam sent her." "Mr. Chen is consulting his lawyers about dissolving the partnership," Oliver finished. "He's particularly upset about the recording where Adam called him a useful idiot." By day 4, Adam's carefully constructed business world was crumbling. Margot watched from Jim's study as her phone lit up with messages from mutual acquaintances. Adam was frantically trying to do damage control, claiming the evidence was fabricated, that Margot was trying to destroy him out of spite. But the photos were time-stamped, the texts came from his verified number, the recordings were clearly his voice. "He's panicking," Jim observed, reading the business news on his tablet. 3 major partners have already withdrawn from his latest development project. The Singapore deal is dead. His company's stock is dropping. "Good," Margot said coldly. "Let him feel what it's like to watch everything you built disappear." That evening, as they reviewed the financial traces Morrison's contacts had found, 3 offshore accounts totaling nearly $4 million, Jim found himself watching Margot instead of the documents. The way she bit her lip when concentrating, the way her fingers moved gracefully across the papers, the fire in her eyes when she talked about justice for Shelley. "You're staring," Margot said without looking up. "I'm admiring," Jim corrected. "There's a difference." She looked up then, and something electric passed between them. "Jim ... "I know," he said softly, Wrong time, wrong circumstances, but I can't help seeing you, Margot. Really seeing you, your strength, your intelligence, your fierce love for your daughter. Adam is a fool." "I'm still married to that fool," she reminded him, though her voice was gentle. "Not for much longer," Morrison interrupted, entering the room with a triumphant expression. "I just got off the phone with a judge. Given the evidence of attempted murder and the financial fraud, we've been granted an emergency hearing. Adam will be served papers tomorrow. The prenup is officially challenged, and his assets are frozen pending investigation." Margot sagged with relief. "He can't access the offshore accounts?" "Not a penny. And here's the best part. Hillary's name is on one of the accounts. She's now implicated in the fraud. If she's smart, she'll distance herself from Adam immediately." That night, unable to sleep, Margot walked through Jim's gardens. The white roses glowed in the moonlight, and she thought about how much had changed in just a few weeks. She'd arrived here broken and abandoned. Now she was orchestrating her husband's downfall with the precision of a general. "Couldn't sleep either." Jim's voice came from behind her. She turned to find him in jeans and a simple t-shirt, looking younger and more vulnerable than she'd ever seen him. "Too much adrenaline," she admitted. They walked together through the gardens, maintaining that careful distance that had become both a comfort and a frustration. "Can I ask you something?" Margot said. "Why white roses? Your whole garden is white roses." "Amanda loved them," Jim said simply. "She said white roses represented new beginnings, fresh starts. After she died, I couldn't bear to change them. But lately—" He paused, glancing at her. "Lately, I've been thinking maybe she was right about the new beginnings part." "Jim, I'm not asking for anything," he said quickly. "I know you need time, space, healing. I just want you to know that when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'll be here." Margot felt tears prick her eyes. This man, this kind, patient, wonderful man, was everything Adam had never been. "You barely know me. I know you work 17-hour days to keep your mind off missing Shelley. I know you make Earl Grey tea at exactly 3 p.m. every day because it was your mother's favorite. I know you arrange books not just by publication date, but by the emotional journey they represent. I know you sing Motown songs when you think no one's listening. I know you're the strongest woman I've ever met, and you don't even realize it." Margot stared at him, stunned. He'd been paying attention to every small detail, learning her in a way Adam never had in 10 years of marriage. Her phone buzzed, breaking the moment. Another video from Shelley. "Mama, something's happening. Hillary and Daddy had a huge fight. She found out about the frozen accounts. She's packing her things. She said the baby isn't even his. She's been playing him just like he played you. I got it all on video. Daddy is crying. I've never seen him cry before. It's weird. Anyway, phase 2 complete. Love you." Margot showed Jim the video and he laughed, a rich, warm sound that made her stomach flutter. "Your daughter is a force of nature," he said. "She's my revenge and my redemption all in one," Margot replied. "And soon she'll be free of him." The next morning brought more chaos for Adam. He was served with papers at his office, in front of his remaining staff. The news of his frozen assets spread quickly through their social circle. Hillary had indeed left, taking with her several expensive pieces of jewelry and leaving behind a pregnancy test showing she'd lied about the baby. Adam Sandler, master manipulator, had been outmaneuvered by his 9-year-old daughter, his abandoned wife, and a millionaire who'd fallen in love with the woman Adam had tried to destroy. The plan was working perfectly. But Margot knew this was just the beginning. The real revenge, the complete destruction of Adam Sandler, was yet to come. Chapter 6. The Financial Trap. Money talks, but when it walks away, the silence is deafening, and Adam Sandler was about to learn just how quiet his world could become. The federal investigator sat across from Adam in his once prestigious office, now stripped of its power like a king without a crown. The man's fingers moved through financial documents with mechanical precision, each page another nail in Adam's coffin. Mr. Sandler, these offshore accounts in your name contain exactly $3.7 million that should be in your company's holdings, the investigator said flatly. Your signature is on every transfer. Those are forgeries. Adam's voice cracked with desperation. My wife, she had access to everything. She must have... Your wife, who you claimed abandoned her family, the one you said was mentally unstable. The investigator's eyebrow raised. The same wife who somehow managed to orchestrate complex international financial transfers while having a mental breakdown? Meanwhile, 50 miles away in Jim Sterling's mansion, Margot watched the live feed from the security camera Shelley had planted in Adam's office. Her daughter's technical skills had surprised everyone. Apparently, she'd been learning coding online for the past year, preparing for exactly this moment. He's sweating through his suit, Jim observed, standing beside Margot. $3,000 Armani, and he's sweating through it like a common criminal. He is a common criminal, Margot replied. He just dressed it up better than most. Morrison entered the room with a satisfied expression. The federal judge just signed the order. All of Adam's assets are frozen pending investigation. Every account, every property, every investment. He can't access a single penny. On the screen, they watched Adam receive the news via phone. His face went from red to white to grey in the span of seconds. But the really beautiful part, Morrison continued, is that Hillary Hayes is listed as a co-signer on one of the Cayman accounts. She's now part of the federal investigation. As if on cue, Margot's phone buzzed with a new video from Shelley. This time, the 9-year-old had managed to hide in the coat closet during Adam and Hillary's confrontation. Hillary's voice was shrill with rage. You told me you were rich. You promised me jewelry, vacations, a life of luxury. Now the feds are calling me. My name is on those accounts. Baby, please, we can figure this out. Don't baby me. The sound of a slap echoed through the phone. You're broke, Adam. Worse than broke. You're going to prison, and you tried to drag me down with you. Hillary, I love you. Her laugh was cruel. Love? You don't know what love is. You're a pathetic middle-aged man who thought he could buy a younger woman. Well, guess what? Richard Kensington from the Boston branch has been pursuing me for months. Real money, old money, and he's not stupid enough to put my name on fraudulent accounts. The baby, there is no baby, you idiot. There never was. You think I'd actually carry your child? I was just waiting for you to divorce Margot and marry me so I could take half of everything. But now, there's nothing to take. The video showed Hillary storming out, her designer heels clicking against marble like a countdown to Adam's complete isolation. Shelley's camera caught Adam collapsing into his chair, head in his hands, sobbing. I almost feel sorry for him, Margot said. Then she remembered the poisoned soup, the bruises on her arms, the systematic destruction of her self-worth over years. Almost. The next 3 days brought an avalanche of consequences for Adam. The country club, where he'd held court like a king among his wealthy peers, revoked his membership after several wives complained about inappropriate advances he'd made over the years. Advances they'd kept quiet about until now, when his power evaporated. Mrs. Harrison called me, Jim said, reading from his phone. Apparently, Adam cornered her in the coat room at last year's gala. She was too afraid to tell anyone because of his influence. Now she's filing a formal complaint. Mrs. Wyatt has similar stories, Morrison added, as does the young bartender from the club, and 2 female employees from his company. It seems Adam has a long history that's just now coming to light. Margot felt sick. How many women did he hurt while I was looking the other way? You weren't looking the other way, Jim said firmly. You were surviving. There's a difference. That afternoon, Shelley sent her most valuable contribution yet. She'd managed to guess Adam's email password, their old anniversary date, the one he celebrated, not the real one, and had downloaded everything before he could change it. The emails painted a picture of systematic fraud going back 5 years, false invoices, shell companies, bribes to city officials for construction permits. But most damning were the emails between Adam and Dr. Harold Benson, the psychiatrist. Subject: Margot evaluation. Harry, I need you to say she's showing signs of schizophrenia. I don't care if you've never met her. I'm paying you enough to make this work. If she ends up dead, it needs to look like suicide brought on by mental illness. Make the paper trail convincing. Margot's hands shook as she read. He was planning to kill me and make it look like suicide. But he failed, Jim said, his hand covering hers. You're here, you're alive, you're winning. It was the first time he'd touched her intentionally, and the warmth of his hand sent electricity through her entire body. She looked up at him, seeing not pity, but admiration in his grey eyes. Walk with me, he said softly. They left Morrison to compile the email evidence and walked through the gardens as the sun began to set. The sky painted itself in shades of rose and gold, and the white roses seemed to glow in the dying light. You know what I love about sunset? Jim asked. It's proof that endings can be beautiful. My marriage is ending, Margot said. I don't feel beautiful. I feel empty, like I wasted 10 years on a man who never existed. He existed, Jim corrected. The man you fell in love with, the one who cooked you soup and gave you his jacket in the rain, he existed. He just chose to become someone else. That's on him, not you. They stopped by the fountain, water catching the last rays of sunlight like liquid diamonds. Jim turned to face her, still holding her hand. You're not empty, Margot. You're full of strength, intelligence, fierce love for your daughter. You're full of grace, even in the face of cruelty. You're full of light that Adam tried to extinguish but couldn't. How do you see all that? She whispered. Because I've been watching you rebuild yourself piece by piece. Because I've seen you choose justice over vengeance, dignity over bitterness. Because... He paused, his thumb tracing circles on her hand. Because I've fallen in love with the woman you're becoming. Margot's breath caught. Jim, I know it's too soon. I know you're still married, still healing. I'm not asking for anything. I just needed you to know that when this is over, when you're free, I'll be here. However long it takes. The sun dipped below the horizon, and in that moment between day and night, Margot felt something shift inside her. The empty space Adam had left wasn't empty anymore. It was filling with possibility, with hope, with the gentle pressure of Jim's hand in hers. Her phone buzzed, Oliver with an update. Adam had been escorted from his office by security after the company board voted to terminate him immediately. His company car was repossessed. His corporate credit cards cancelled. In the span of a week, he'd gone from millionaire executive to unemployed pariah. Phase 3 complete, Margot murmured, reading Shelley's latest text. Her daughter had sent it from school, where she was safe and protected by Jim's security team. She says Adam came to pick her up today, but the school wouldn't release her because his name was flagged in the system. Morrison filed the emergency custody papers this morning, Jim explained. Given the evidence of attempted murder and fraud, the judge granted temporary sole custody to you, even in absentia. Adam can't get near her. Tears of relief streamed down Margot's face. My baby is safe. She's more than safe. She's the architect of his downfall. 9 years old, and she's orchestrated the complete financial destruction of a grown man. Jim squeezed her hand. She's definitely your daughter. That night, Margot stood on the balcony of the guest house, watching the stars appear one by one. Adam was out there somewhere, frantically trying to salvage something from the wreckage of his life. His money frozen, his mistress gone, his reputation destroyed, his daughter beyond reach. The financial trap had snapped shut perfectly, but Margot knew there were still more phases to come. The public humiliation, the complete downfall, the final revenge. For now, though, she allowed herself this moment of victory. She looked at her hand, still tingling from Jim's touch, and thought about new beginnings growing from endings. Adam had tried to bury her. He'd forgotten she was a seed. Chapter 7. Public Humiliation. The Sterling Foundation's annual charity gala was where reputations were made and destroyed. Tonight, Adam Sandler would experience the latter in front of everyone who had ever mattered to him. The ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton gleamed like a jewel box, crystal chandeliers casting rainbow patterns across 500 of the city's most powerful people. Margot stood at the entrance in a stunning black gown that Jim had insisted on buying for her. Armor for battle, he'd called it. The dress hugged her curves before flowing to the floor like liquid midnight, and her natural hair formed a crown of defiance. "You look magnificent," Jim whispered, his hand resting protectively on the small of her back. "Are you ready for this?" "I've been ready since the day he tried to poison me," Margot replied, her eyes scanning the crowd. The plan was precise. Adam, desperate to salvage his reputation and find new investors, had somehow secured a ticket to the gala, probably his last credit card that hadn't been frozen yet. He would come here to network, to spin his story, to paint himself as the victim of a vindictive wife. He wouldn't see the trap until it was too late. "He's here," Oliver murmured through their earpieces. Jim had hired security for the evening, but Oliver was running point. "Just entered through the main doors. He looks desperate." Indeed, Adam looked like a man drowning on dry land. His tuxedo was the same one from last year. He couldn't afford a new one. His face was gaunt, stress having carved away his usual smugness. He moved through the crowd with the forced smile of someone who knew everyone was talking about him. "Mrs. Harrison just turned her back on him," Oliver reported. "Mr. Wyatt pretended not to see him. He's heading for the bar." "Let him drink," Margot said coldly. "Let him think he has a chance." The first hour passed with elegant cruelty. Adam tried to engage various business associates, each conversation ending with polite but firm rejection. The whispers followed him like shadows. Heard he embezzled millions. Tried to poison his wife. The secretary left him for Richard Kensington. Then came the moment they'd been waiting for. "Ladies and gentlemen," the event coordinator announced, "we have a special presentation about the importance of protecting our families." The lights dimmed. On the massive screen behind the stage, a video began to play. At first, it seemed like a typical charity promotional video. Statistics about domestic violence, the importance of supporting victims. Then, Shelley's face appeared. She was sitting in what looked like a library, wearing her school uniform, looking directly at the camera with those intense eyes that missed nothing. "My name is Shelley Westbrook," she said clearly. "I'm 9 years old, and I want to tell you about the night my father tried to murder my mother." Gasps rippled through the ballroom. Adam's champagne glass shattered on the floor. The screen filled with the video Shelley had taken that night. Adam adding the white powder to the soup, his careful movements to hide it, the way he'd smiled as he carried it to Margot. "Don't eat, Mama!" Shelley's recorded scream echoed through the ballroom, then the cat, dying in agony on the kitchen floor. "Security!" Adam shouted, starting toward the stage, but 2 of Jim's hired guards stepped smoothly into his path. The video continued. Now it was Adam's voice, the recording Shelley had made of him on the phone with Hillary. "She's so stupid. She actually thinks I'm trying to save our marriage. By next month, she'll either be dead or in a psychiatric ward. The insurance money will set us up for life." More gasps. Someone screamed. Adam's face had gone the color of old paper. Another video. Security footage from Jim's mansion, showing Adam dropping Margot off, driving away immediately, abandoning her without a word, without money, without explanation. Then the emails appeared on screen, each one more damning than the last. The conspiracy with Dr. Benson to declare Margot insane. The forged signatures on the embezzled funds, the plans to frame her for his crimes. "That's fabricated!" Adam shouted. "It's all lies! My wife is crazy! She's trying to destroy me!" "Actually," a familiar voice said from the stage, "she's trying to get justice." Shelley walked onto the stage, not in person, but via live video feed from a secure location. Jim had insisted on keeping her safe, away from Adam's potential reach. "Hi, Daddy," she said, her young voice carrying the weight of an old soul. "Remember when you told me Mama was sick? That she imagined things? I believed you for about 5 minutes. Then I started watching and recording everything." The screen filled with video after video, Adam with Hillary, Adam forging documents, Adam practicing Margot's signature, Adam discussing the poisoning with someone on the phone whose voice sounded suspiciously like Dr. Benson. "You thought I was just a stupid kid," Shelley continued, "but Mama taught me to pay attention, to document truth, to stand up to bullies, even when they're family." The crowd was dead silent now, all eyes moving between the screen and Adam, who stood frozen in the center of the ballroom like an animal caught in headlights. "There's one more thing," Shelley said. "Mama, I know you're watching. I love you. And Mr. Jim, thank you for protecting her when Daddy tried to throw her away." The screen went dark. The lights came up, and there, at the top of the grand staircase, stood Margot. She descended slowly, each step deliberate, her head high and shoulders back. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. Jim met her at the bottom, offering his arm, and together they walked toward Adam. "Hello, Adam," Margot said, her voice carrying across the silent ballroom. "Surprised to see me? You shouldn't be. You brought me to Jim's house yourself. You just didn't expect me to survive there, to thrive there, to find allies there." "You bitch," Adam snarled, his mask finally completely gone. "You've destroyed everything." "No," Margot said calmly. "You destroyed everything the night you tried to poison me. I just made sure everyone knew about it." The ballroom doors burst open. Police officers entered, their badges gleaming under the chandeliers. "Adam Sandler?" The lead detective's voice was firm. "You're under arrest for attempted murder, embezzlement, fraud and conspiracy." "This is entrapment," Adam shouted as the handcuffs clicked around his wrists. "She set me up." "Actually," the detective said, "your daughter came to us with evidence 2 weeks ago. We've been building the case since then. The presentation tonight was just to ensure you couldn't flee. You're a flight risk, Mr. Sandler." As they dragged Adam toward the door, he turned back to look at Margot one last time. "I loved you once," he said desperately. "Doesn't that count for something?" Margot stepped forward, Jim steady beside her. "You loved the idea of me. Young, naive, willing to give up everything for you. When I aged, when I grew wise, when I became a person instead of a possession, you tried to kill me rather than let me go." She paused. "The man I loved died long before you tried to poison me. I'm just burying him publicly." Adam's scream of rage echoed through the ballroom as the police dragged him out. The doors closed and for a moment nobody moved. Then someone started clapping. Mrs. Harrison, then Mrs. Wyatt, then another woman and another. Soon the entire ballroom erupted in applause, not for the spectacle, but for Margot, for her courage, for her strength, for her refusal to disappear quietly. Jim turned to her, his eyes shining with pride and something deeper. "You did it." "We did it," she corrected. "You, me, and my brilliant daughter." "Speaking of which," Oliver said through the earpiece, "Miss Shelley would like to know if she can have ice cream for dinner since she just helped take down a criminal." Margot laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. "Tell her she can have all the ice cream she wants." The rest of the gala passed in a blur. People approached Margot all evening, some offering support, others apologizing for not seeing Adam's true nature sooner, many sharing their own stories of survival. She accepted their words with grace, but her mind was elsewhere. Tomorrow, she would see Shelley in person for the first time in over a month. Tomorrow, the divorce proceedings would begin in earnest. Tomorrow, her new life would truly start. But tonight, as she danced with Jim Sterling in the ballroom where her husband had been arrested, his hand warm on her waist and his eyes never leaving her face, Margot allowed herself to feel something she'd thought was lost forever. Hope. The music swirled around them, and Jim pulled her closer. "You're free," he whispered. "Not yet," she replied, "but soon." "I'll wait," he said simply, "however long it takes." As they danced, Margot caught sight of herself in the ballroom's mirrors. The woman looking back wasn't the naive girl who'd married Adam, nor was she the broken woman he'd tried to poison. She was something new, something forged in fire and refined by suffering. She was magnificent, and she was just getting started. Chapter 8. The Complete Downfall. Justice has a sound. Sometimes it's a gavel falling, sometimes it's a cell door closing, but for Adam Sandler, it was the echo of his own voice, confessing to attempted murder in a crowded courtroom. The federal courthouse stood like a monument to accountability, its marble steps worn by millions of feet seeking fairness. Margot climbed them slowly, Shelley's small hand in hers, Jim walking protectively on her other side. It had been 2 weeks since the gala, 2 weeks since Adam's arrest, and today would determine everything. "Remember what we practiced," Morrison said, adjusting his tie. "The truth. Nothing but the truth. Let the evidence speak." The courtroom was packed. The attempted murder of a wife by a millionaire husband had captured public attention, especially after the dramatic arrest at the charity gala. Reporters filled the back rows, their cameras focused on the defense table where Adam sat in an orange jumpsuit, his court-appointed attorney looking overwhelmed beside him. "All rise for Judge Catherine Reeves," the bailiff announced. Judge Reeves was known for her no-nonsense approach and her particular distaste for domestic violence. She reviewed the case files with sharp eyes before speaking. "We're here for multiple hearings today: bail reconsideration, custody determination, and asset division. Mr. Sandler, your request for bail is denied. The evidence of flight risk is substantial, including the offshore accounts and a ticket to the Cayman Islands purchased 3 days before your arrest." Adam's face crumbled. His attorney started to protest, but the judge cut him off with a raised hand. "As for the attempted murder charges, that will be handled in criminal court. Today, we're dealing with the civil matters. Mrs. Westbrook, please take the stand." Margot walked to the witness stand with quiet dignity. She told her story simply: the years of emotional abuse escalating to physical violence, the night of the poisoning, the abandonment at Jim's mansion, the discovery of Adam's plans to frame her for his crimes. "He didn't just try to kill me, Your Honor," Margot said, her voice steady. "He tried to erase me, to make me disappear so completely that no one would even question my absence." Adam's attorney tried to cross-examine, suggesting Margot had fabricated evidence, but Morrison was ready. Document after document appeared on the courtroom screens: the forged signatures, the embezzlement trail, the life insurance policy, the emails with Dr. Benson. Then came Shelley's turn. The judge had agreed to let her testify via closed-circuit video to avoid trauma. Shelley appeared on the screen, sitting in a comfortable room with a child advocate beside her. "Shelley," the judge said gently, "can you tell us what you saw the night of your parents' anniversary?" Shelley's voice was clear and precise. "Daddy put poison in Mama's soup. I saw him take it from his pocket, a little bottle with white powder. He stirred it in when he thought no one was looking. But I was looking. I'm always looking." "Why were you watching so carefully?" "Because Daddy had been mean to Mama for a long time. He would grab her arms and leave bruises. He would say terrible things. I started recording him on my tablet because I thought someday someone would need to know the truth." The judge reviewed Shelley's videos, her expression growing darker with each one. When she reached the recording of Adam discussing the murder plan with Hillary, she had to pause. "Mr. Sandler," Judge Reeves said coldly, "in 30 years on the bench, I've rarely seen such calculated cruelty. Your own voice on these recordings removes any doubt about your intentions." The custody decision was swift and absolute. Full legal and physical custody is awarded to Margot Westbrook. "Mr. Sandler, your parental rights are terminated pending the outcome of your criminal trial. You are to have no contact with the child." Adam tried to stand, his attorney restraining him. "She's my daughter. You can't." "I can, and I have," the judge interrupted. "You plotted to murder her mother in front of her. You traumatized her. You forced her to become a detective in her own home to protect herself and her mother. You have forfeited any right to call yourself her father." Next came the financial matters. Morrison presented his case methodically. The prenuptial agreement was void due to attempted murder. The assets Adam had hidden were marital property. The embezzled funds would be returned to the company, with Margot receiving Adam's shares as compensation. "Your Honor," Adam's attorney protested weakly, "Mr. Sandler will have nothing left." "Mr. Sandler should have thought of that before he tried to poison his wife," Judge Reeves replied. "I'm awarding Mrs. Westbrook full ownership of the marital home, all legitimate assets, and damages for emotional distress. Mr. Sandler's illegal gains will be dealt with in criminal court." The final blow came from Adam's former company. Their representative stood to read a statement. "The board has voted unanimously to terminate Adam Sandler for cause, citing embezzlement, fraud, and bringing disrepute to the company. All bonuses, stock options, and retirement benefits are forfeit. Furthermore, we are pursuing criminal charges for the $3 million he stole." Adam sat stunned as his world officially ended. No money, no home, no job, no family. His parents had disowned him after seeing the evidence. His friends had vanished. Even his attorney was only there because the court required it. After the hearing, Margot stood on the courthouse steps, breathing free air for the first time in years. Shelley was beside her, finally back where she belonged. "Mama," Shelley said, looking up with those wise eyes, "is it over?" "The legal part is," Margot replied, pulling her daughter close. "The healing part is just beginning." Jim had been quiet throughout the proceedings, a steady presence but maintaining his respectful distance. Now, as they walked to his car, he finally spoke. "How are you feeling?" "Empty and full at the same time," Margot admitted. "Empty of him, full of possibilities." That evening, after Shelley had fallen asleep in her new room at Jim's mansion, they would stay until Margot could bear to return to the house where Adam had tried to kill her. Jim found Margot in the garden. "I need to tell you something," he said, his voice unusually nervous. Margot turned to face him, moonlight casting shadows across his features. "Jim, if this is about—" "I love you," he said simply. "I've fallen completely, irrevocably in love with you. Not with your strength, though I admire it. Not with your beauty, though you take my breath away. But with you, the woman who sings Motown when she thinks no one's listening, who arranges books by emotional journey, who survived hell and came out generous instead of bitter." Margot's eyes filled with tears. "Jim, I'm not ready." "I know," he interrupted gently. "I'm not asking you to love me back. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I just needed you to know that while you're healing, while you're rebuilding, while you're learning to trust again, I'll be here. No pressure, no expectations. Just here." "I don't know if I can ever trust another man," Margot whispered. "Adam broke something in me." "He didn't break you," Jim said firmly. "He tried to, but look at you. You're standing in my garden, free and strong, with your daughter safe beside you. You won. And someday, when you're ready, you'll realize that not all men are Adam. Some of us—" He paused, vulnerability flickering across his face. Some of us just want to love you the way you deserve to be loved. Margot reached out, touching his face gently. You're a good man, Jim Sterling. And you're an extraordinary woman, Margot Westbrook. They stood there in the garden, not touching, except for her hand on his cheek, the white roses witnessing this moment of possibility. Inside, Shelley slept peacefully for the first time in months. In a jail cell across town, Adam sat alone with the wreckage of his choices. The next morning brought news that Adam's criminal trial would begin in 3 months. He faced 15 to 20 years for attempted murder, plus additional time for embezzlement and fraud. His public defender, overwhelmed by the evidence, was already discussing plea deals. He'll probably get 15 years minimum, Morrison told Margot over breakfast. With good behavior, he might be out in 10. 10 years, Margot mused. Shelley will be 19, in college, an adult. And you? Jim asked quietly. Where will you be in 10 years? Margot looked at him across the table. This kind man who'd sheltered her, protected her, helped her destroy her enemy and reclaim her life. She thought about trust and time and the possibility of love after betrayal. I don't know, she said honestly, but for the first time in years I'm excited to find out. Shelley bounded into the room, full of 9-year-old energy despite everything she'd been through. Mr. Jim, can you teach me chess today? I want to learn strategy. Haven't you proven you already know strategy? Jim laughed. That was tactics, Shelley corrected with a grin. Now I want to learn long-term planning. As Jim set up the chessboard and began teaching Shelley, Margot watched them, her daughter and this man who might someday become something more. The morning sun streamed through the windows, and for the first time since that terrible anniversary dinner, Margot felt something she'd thought was lost forever. Peace. Adam's complete downfall was finished. Now it was time for her complete rise. Chapter 9. The healing isn't linear. It's a spiral staircase where sometimes you circle back to face the same demons from a higher vantage point. 6 months had passed since Adam's arrest. The house where he'd tried to poison Margot had been sold, the proceeds going into Shelley's college fund. They'd moved permanently into Jim's guest house, though the lines between guest and family had long since blurred. How does it feel to be back in this memory? Dr. Patricia Williams asked, her voice gentle but probing. Margot sat in the therapist's office, a cup of tea growing cold in her hands. Like I'm watching someone else's life. That woman who trusted so blindly. I don't recognize her anymore. That's dissociation, Dr. Williams explained. Your mind is protecting you by creating distance from the trauma. But to truly heal, you need to integrate that woman's experience with who you are now. Therapy twice a week had become Margot's lifeline. Some days she raged, some days she wept. Some days she sat in silence, unable to articulate the depth of betrayal that went beyond the poisoning, the years of small cruelties that had prepared the ground for that ultimate violence. There's something else, Margot said quietly. Jim Sterling. He's been patient, kind. He writes me letters. Letters? Margot pulled out a handwritten note from her purse, the latest of dozens Jim had left for her, on her breakfast tray, in the library where she worked, tucked into books he knew she'd read. Dear Margot, today I saw you teaching Shelley to identify birds in the garden, the way you pointed out the cardinal's nest, how you explained their mating habits with such gentle precision. It reminded me that knowledge shared with love becomes wisdom. You're giving your daughter roots and wings simultaneously. It's beautiful to witness. Yours in admiration, Jim. He never pressures, Margot explained, never demands. He just observes, appreciates, waits. How does that make you feel? Terrified, Margot admitted, because I want to trust him, Because I'm starting to feel things I thought Adam had killed. Because what if I'm wrong again? Dr. Williams leaned forward. Margot, trauma teaches us that danger lurks everywhere, but healing means learning to differentiate between real threats and echoes of old ones. What evidence do you have that Jim is like Adam? None, Margot whispered. They're nothing alike. Indeed, the contrast was stark. Where Adam had been demanding, Jim was patient. Where Adam had been controlling, Jim respected boundaries. Where Adam had isolated her, Jim encouraged her independence, paying for her therapy, supporting her decision to return to law school part-time, never questioning her choices. That evening, Margot found Jim and Shelley in the study, deep in a chess match. Her daughter's face was scrunched in concentration while Jim waited patiently for her move. "You're leaving your queen exposed," Jim noted gently. "Or am I?" Shelley moved her knight, revealing a trap she'd been setting for 3 moves. "Checkmate in 2 moves, Mr. Jim." Jim stared at the board, then laughed, that warm, rich sound that made Margot's stomach flutter. "Beaten by a 9-year-old. My ego may never recover." "You're not beaten," Shelley said seriously. "You're teaching. There's a difference. Mama says the best teachers celebrate when their students surpass them." Jim's eyes found Margot in the doorway. "Your mother is wise." "She's the wisest," Shelley agreed. "That's why Daddy couldn't beat her. He thought she was weak, but she was just choosing her battles." Later, after Shelley had gone to bed, Jim found Margot in the library. She was organizing a new shipment, first editions of Toni Morrison novels he'd bought specifically because he'd seen her reading Beloved repeatedly. "Would you like to go to dinner?" he asked suddenly. "Just dinner. Not a date. Just 2 adults eating food in the same location." Margot looked up, surprised. In 6 months, he'd never asked for anything resembling a date. "Why now?" "Because you smiled 3 times today without checking yourself. Because you hummed while making tea. Because I think you're starting to remember that you're allowed to enjoy things." He paused. "And selfishly, because I'd like to spend time with you outside these walls." They went to a quiet Italian restaurant, nothing fancy, just good food and soft lighting. Jim told her about his wife Amanda, how her death had taught him that love was too precious to waste on games or pretense. Margot found herself laughing at his stories, relaxing in a way she hadn't in years. "Can I ask you something?" she said over dessert. "Why did you really help me? That first night?" Jim considered his words carefully. "Because I recognized something in your eyes, the same look Amanda had when she was first diagnosed, that combination of terror and determination. I couldn't save Amanda from cancer, but I could save you from Adam. It felt like redemption, maybe. And now I help you because you've become essential to my life. You and Shelley both. My house was a museum before you came. Now it's a home." 2 days later, a letter arrived that shattered Margot's fragile peace. Adam's handwriting on the envelope made her hands shake. Jim offered to burn it unread, but Dr. Williams had said confronting the past was part of healing. "Margot, I'm writing this from hell. They call it prison, but it's hell. I'm beaten daily, humiliated, destroyed. Are you happy now? Is this what you wanted? I loved you once. Remember our wedding day? You cried when you saw me waiting at the altar. You said I was your whole world. What happened to us? Shelley needs her father. You're poisoning her against me, just like you poisoned our marriage with your paranoia and frigidity. If you have any humanity left, you'll bring her to see me. Let me explain. Let me apologize. Let me be her father again. I forgive you for destroying my life. Can't you forgive me for one mistake? Adam. One mistake, Margot said numbly, showing the letter to Jim. He calls attempted murder one mistake. He's trying to manipulate you even from prison, Jim said, anger threading through his usually calm voice. This is what abusers do. They rewrite history, play the victim, use the children as weapons. I need to see him, Margot said suddenly, one last time, to close this chapter properly. Jim's face went pale. Margot, no, I need to face him, to show myself that he has no power over me anymore. She took Jim's hand, the first time she'd initiated contact. Will you come with me? The state prison was a grey monument to consequences. Adam was brought to the visiting room in shackles, his orange jumpsuit hanging on his diminished frame. Prison had not been kind. His hair was thinning, his face gaunt, his former swagger replaced by a shuffling defeat. Margot, he breathed, his eyes lighting up. Then he saw Jim. You brought him? Your new man? How long did you wait after destroying me? A week? A day? 6 months, Margot said calmly. And Jim isn't my man. He's my friend, the first real friend I've had in years because you isolated me from everyone else. I loved you. You tried to murder me, Adam. You put antifreeze in my soup. Our daughter watched you do it. That's not love. That's possession taken to its ultimate extreme. Adam's mask slipped, revealing the monster beneath. You were going to leave me. I saw the way you looked at me, like I disgusted you. I gave you everything. You gave me bruises. You gave me terror. You gave me a decade of slowly dying inside. Margot leaned forward. But I need you to know something. I forgive you. Adam's eyes widened with hope. I forgive you because holding on to hate is drinking poison and expecting you to die. I forgive you because I refuse to let you occupy any more space in my head. I forgive you because Shelley needs a mother who chose healing over hatred. She stood. But I will never forget, and you will never see either of us again. Margot, please. Goodbye, Adam. Enjoy your consequences. She walked out without looking back, Jim beside her, leaving Adam screaming her name until the guards dragged him away. In the car, Margot broke down completely, deep, wrenching sobs that seemed to come from her very soul. Jim held her while she cried, his strong arms the only thing keeping her from shattering completely. You did it, he whispered into her hair. You faced him. You won. Why doesn't it feel like winning? Because healing hurts. Because letting go of even toxic love leaves a void. Because you're human and humans grieve even the death of illusions. That night, Margot found Jim in the garden, standing among his white roses in the moonlight. She walked to him slowly, her heart pounding. I'm not ready to be loved, she said quietly. I'm still too broken, too scared, too... Margot, Jim interrupted gently, I'm not asking you to be ready. I'm asking you to let me love you while you heal. There's a difference. He pulled out a small box, and Margot's breath caught. Inside was a simple silver ring, not a diamond, but a moonstone. Healing, new beginnings, gentle energy. This isn't an engagement ring, Jim explained quickly. It's a promise ring, my promise to wait, to support, to love you without conditions or timeline. Wear it when you're ready, or never. Just know that my love isn't dependent on your reciprocation. Margot took the ring with trembling fingers. What if I never heal completely? What if I'm always a little bit broken? Then I'll love your broken pieces too, Jim said simply. They're part of your story, part of what makes you extraordinary. Margot looked at this man who'd saved her without trying to own her, who'd sheltered her without caging her, who loved her without conditioning it on her loving him back. I'll wear it, she whispered, not as acceptance but as hope. Hope that someday I'll be whole enough to love you the way you deserve. Jim slipped the ring onto her right hand, not the left, not yet, and kissed her forehead gently. You're already whole, Margot. You're just learning to see it. As they stood in the garden, Margot felt something shift inside her. The spiral staircase of healing had brought her full circle, but higher now, with a better view. Adam was in prison. Shelley was safe. and this good man was offering her a love that expected nothing but hoped for everything. She wasn't healed yet, but for the first time, she believed she could be. Chapter 10. The Greatest Revenge. The greatest revenge isn't destroying your enemy, it's building a life so beautiful that their absence becomes irrelevant. The courtroom was silent as Judge Catherine Reeves adjusted her glasses, the weight of final judgment heavy in the air. Margot sat in Jim's kitchen, speakerphone on the marble counter, Shelley pressed against her side. They could have been there in person, but Margot refused to give Adam another second of her physical presence. "Adam Sandler," the judge's voice crackled through the phone. "You have been found guilty on all counts: attempted murder in the first degree, embezzlement, fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and falsification of medical records." Morrison, their faithful lawyer, was their eyes in the courtroom. "He's shaking," he whispered into the phone. "Actually shaking." "For the crime of attempted murder," the judge continued, "I sentence you to 15 years. For embezzlement, 5 years. For fraud, 3 years. For conspiracy, 2 years. These sentences will run concurrently, with the stipulation that you serve a mandatory minimum of 15 years without possibility of early parole." "No!" Adam's scream came through the phone. "Margot, tell them you forgive me. Tell them it was a mistake. Please." "Furthermore," Judge Reeves said, her voice cutting through his pleas, "you are ordered to pay full restitution to your former company, and all remaining assets will be transferred to your ex-wife as damages. You are permanently barred from any contact with Margot Westbrook or Shelley Westbrook." "She's my daughter." Adam's voice was breaking. "You can't take my daughter." "You took yourself from her the night you tried to murder her mother in front of her," the judge replied coldly. "Remove the defendant." The sounds of struggle came through the phone. Adam fighting the bailiffs, screaming Margot's name, begging for another chance. Then silence. "It's over," Morrison said softly. "He'll be 60 when he gets out. Shelley will be 24, probably married, maybe with kids of her own. He'll be a stranger." Margot set down her coffee cup with steady hands. Somewhere across the city, Adam was being dragged back to his cell to begin a decade and a half of consequences. She waited to feel something: triumph, satisfaction, even pity. Instead, she felt only peace. "How do you feel, Mama?" Shelley asked, her wise eyes studying her mother's face. "Free," Margot said simply. "For the first time in my life, completely free." Jim pulled them both into his arms, and Margot felt the solid warmth of his chest, the safety of his embrace. This man who'd saved her without trying to own her, who'd waited without pressuring, who'd loved without conditions. "Now what?" Shelley asked. "Now," Jim said, pressing a kiss to Margot's forehead, "we live." 3 months later, the Sterling Mansion gardens were transformed into something from a fairy tale. Not the elaborate society wedding Adam had demanded 11 years ago, with 500 guests she didn't know, and a cake that cost more than most people's cars. But something intimate, real, authentic. White roses everywhere, their petals catching the afternoon light like nature's own chandeliers. These were Amanda's roses, Jim had told her when he proposed properly, 3 months after the trial. "She planted them when we bought this house, said they represented new beginnings. After she died, I couldn't bear to change anything. But then you came, and the roses bloomed fuller than ever before. Amanda would have loved you. She would have wanted you to have not just the roses, but everything. The house, the happiness, the future we couldn't have." Now Margot stood before the mirror in Amanda's former dressing room, which had been closed like a shrine until Jim insisted she use it. Inside, she'd found a letter, yellowed with age, addressed to the woman who helps him heal. "Dear future love," it had read in Amanda's elegant script. "If you're reading this, it means Jim finally opened his heart again. Good. He's terrible at being alone. He talks to the roses like they're people. Love him well. He deserves it. and know that you have my blessing and my gratitude for bringing light back into his darkness. The roses are yours now. Make them bloom." Margot touched the letter, tucked now into her bouquet, as Naomi helped her with the final touches. The wedding dress was simple ivory silk, nothing like the elaborate $30,000 confection Adam had insisted on. This dress moved like water, like breath, like freedom itself. "You look like hope personified," Naomi said, tears in her eyes. "Remember when you showed up at my door that night, terrified and shaking? Look at you now." "I had help," Margot said, thinking of everyone who'd stood by her: Jim, Morrison, Oliver, Dr. Williams, and most of all, Shelley. "Mama!" Shelley burst through the door, radiant in her light blue dress, holding a tablet. "You need to see this." On the screen was a news article. Adam Sandler attempts suicide in prison, placed on psychiatric hold. Margot's breath caught. Even now, even after everything, the thought of Adam hurt caused a flicker of something. Not love, not anymore, but the ghost of what had been. "He found out about the wedding," Shelley said quietly. "One of the guards told him, showed him the announcement in the paper." "Does this change anything?" Naomi asked carefully. Margot looked at herself in the mirror, strong, healed, about to marry a man who'd shown her what real love looked like. Then she looked at Shelley, her brilliant daughter who'd saved them both with her courage and cunning. "No," she said firmly, "he made his choices. Today I make mine, and I choose joy." The ceremony was held at sunset, golden light painting everything in warm honey tones. Only 50 guests, real friends, not the social climbing acquaintances Adam had collected like trophies. Oliver stood as Jim's best man, tears unashamedly rolling down his weathered British face. Naomi stood as maid of honor, proud and protective, but it was Shelley who stole the show when she stepped up to the microphone. "I want to tell you about choices," she began, her young voice carrying across the garden with startling maturity. "My biological father chose cruelty. He chose lies. He chose another woman. He chose poison. He chose to try to erase my mother rather than simply divorce her. Those were his choices, and he's living with the consequences in a cell where he'll spend 15 years thinking about them." She turned to Jim, her face soft with genuine affection. "Jim Sterling chose differently. He chose to open his door to strangers. He chose patience when my mother couldn't trust. He chose to investigate the truth when everyone else believed the lies. He chose to protect us without possessing us. He chose to love us without conditions or timeline. He chose to wait, to hope, to believe we were worth waiting for." Her eyes found her mother's, tears streaming down both their faces. "Mama, you chose to survive. You chose to fight back. You chose to heal instead of hate. You chose to trust again even when every cell in your body screamed danger. You chose to let love in through the cracks Adam created." She pulled out a small box from behind her back. "And today, I have a choice to make too." She opened the box, revealing a simple silver pin that said DAD. "Jim Sterling, you've been teaching me, protecting me, loving me for over a year. You never tried to replace anyone. You just tried to be yourself. Today, I choose you. Will you choose me too? Will you be my dad?" Jim fell to his knees, pulling Shelley into his arms as the entire garden erupted in tears. "It would be the greatest honor of my life," he whispered, his voice broken with emotion. "I choose you, Shelley, today and every day." When they finally exchanged vows, Margot's voice was strong and clear. "Jim, you found me shattered, and you didn't try to fix me. You just loved me while I fix myself. You showed me that real love doesn't diminish you, it expands you. With you, I'm not less than I was. I'm more than I ever dreamed I could be." Jim's vows were simple but profound. "Margot, you and Shelley brought life back to this museum of a house. You brought laughter where there had been silence, hope where there had been resignation, future where there had been only past. I promise to choose you every day, in big moments and small ones, in joy and in struggle, until my last breath. The reception was deliberately held in the ballroom where Adam had been arrested. I want to dance where he fell, Margot had insisted. I want joy to overwrite humiliation. As they danced their first dance to Etta James's At Last, Morrison approached with an envelope, his expression troubled. I debated whether to give you this tonight, he said apologetically. It arrived at my office yesterday. Inside was a photograph from the prison infirmary. Adam, hollow-eyed and gaunt, held a newspaper showing their wedding announcement. But it was the wall behind him that made Margot's breath catch, covered in obsessive scribblings, photos of her cut from magazines, their old wedding photo with his face scratched out and Jim's crudely drawn in. On the back, in Adam's deteriorating handwriting, you were supposed to be destroyed. You were supposed to be nothing without me. How are you happy? How are you happy? Margot studied the photo for a long moment, then held it up to the candle on their table. The paper caught fire immediately. What are you doing? Morrison asked, alarmed. The greatest revenge, Margot said, watching Adam's rage turn to ash, is living so well that his opinion becomes irrelevant. As the ashes fell, Jim pulled her back into his arms. Have I told you today that you're remarkable? I'm pregnant, she said suddenly, the words tumbling out differently than she'd planned. The music stopped. Jim froze mid-step. The entire ballroom seemed to hold its breath. What? He whispered. 8 weeks. I found out this morning. I wanted to wait until after the ceremony, but seeing that photo, seeing his obsession with destroying our happiness, I needed you to know that we're creating life while he's wasting his. Jim's hands moved to her still flat stomach, tears streaming down his face. Amanda and I tried for 7 years. The cancer took that possibility. I thought I'd never... Are you sure? Very sure. Due in March, spring, new beginnings. Amanda's roses will have company. Shelley appeared beside them, having apparently overheard. A baby? I'm going to be a big sister. When Margot nodded, Shelley whooped with joy, then immediately became serious. I've already started a list of everything I need to teach them. Chess, obviously. Philosophy. How to spot lies. How to document evidence. How to identify poisonous substances. Shelley, Margot laughed. What? It's practical knowledge. 6 months later, as Margot held their newborn son, James Oliver Sterling Jr., she received word that Adam had been removed from suicide watch and placed in general population. He'd requested a photo of the baby, claiming grandparent rights from prison. He says he's the grandfather, Morrison explained over the phone. He's demanding visitation rights for when he gets out. Shelley, holding her baby brother with practiced care, looked up sharply. He's not the grandfather. He's nothing. Jim is the only grandfather this baby will ever know, even if he's technically the father. Love makes family, not DNA. What do you want to do? Jim asked Margot gently. She looked at her family, her husband who'd chosen them, her daughter who'd saved them, her son who represented their future, and felt a peace deeper than oceans. Nothing. We do nothing. He's a ghost, a cautionary tale, a reminder of what happens when you mistake possession for love. He doesn't exist in our world. That night, as she nursed baby James while Jim read to Shelley, Margot thought about the woman she'd been 3 years ago, scared, isolated, raising a spoon of poisoned soup to her lips. That woman had died that night, in a way. But from her ashes had risen something unbreakable. In his prison cell, Adam Sandler sat surrounded by newspaper clippings. The walls were covered with articles about Jim Sterling's business successes, Margot's graduation from law school with honors, Shelley's acceptance into a gifted program, the birth announcement of James Oliver Sterling Jr. "She was supposed to be broken," he whispered to his cellmate, a man in for life who'd grown tired of Adam's obsession. "I took everything from her." "Nah, man," the cellmate replied, looking at the photos. "You gave her everything. You gave her freedom from you. You gave her a reason to fight. You gave her proof that she was stronger than you ever let her believe. Look at her. She's glowing. That man loves her right. That little girl calls another man daddy. That baby won't even know your name." Adam lunged at him, screaming, and ended up in solitary confinement for a week. In the darkness, with nothing but his thoughts, the truth finally crashed over him. Margot hadn't just survived his attempt to destroy her. She'd used it as fuel to build something beautiful. 1 year later, at James's first birthday party, the house was full of genuine laughter. Shelley had decorated everything herself, a new beginnings theme with white roses and spring colors everywhere. She was 11 now, tall and confident, her intelligence shining even brighter. "Speech!" someone called out, and Margot stood, baby James on her hip, Jim's arm around her waist. "A year ago, this little one came into the world," she began, her voice strong. "But really, we were all reborn that day. We became the family we chose to be, not the one circumstances forced us into." She looked at Jim, her eyes soft with the love that had grown slowly, carefully, genuinely. "Someone once tried to poison me," she continued, and the room grew quiet. "He tried to erase me, to make me disappear. But poison only works if you swallow it. And thanks to my brilliant daughter," she smiled at Shelley, "I didn't. Instead, I learned that the opposite of poison isn't medicine, it's love, real love, the kind that helps you grow instead of shrinking you." She raised her glass of sparkling cider. She was pregnant again, though only Jim and Shelley knew. So here's to new beginnings, to chosen families, to white roses that bloom from dark soil, and to the greatest revenge of all, living so well that those who hurt you become irrelevant footnotes in your beautiful story. As everyone toasted, a news alert popped up on Jim's phone. Adam Sandler, sentenced to additional 5 years for prison assault. Jim deleted it without reading further. Adam had made himself irrelevant, adding years to his own sentence while they added life to their family. That night, as Margot stood in the garden among Amanda's roses, her roses now, she felt the presence of all the women who'd survived men like Adam. All the women who'd chosen healing over hatred, building over breaking, love over fear. "Thank you," she whispered to Amanda's memory, to the roses, to the universe that had led her to this moment. The white roses swayed in the evening breeze, and Margot could swear she heard them whisper back, "The greatest revenge is a life well lived." And as she walked back into the house where her daughter was teaching her baby brother to play peekaboo, where her husband was making tea the way she liked it without being asked, where love lived in every corner and shadow had been banished by light, Margot knew the truth. She hadn't just survived Adam Sandler's cruelty. She had transcended it. She had transformed it into triumph. She had won in every way that mattered, and that, a life so full of authentic love that his evil became irrelevant, that was the greatest revenge of all.